Greetings and welcome to the Transform Podcast. I'm your host, Christopher Anastasio. It's Friday, September 2nd, 2022. This is episode 85. And welcome back, guys. Welcome to our third episode published this week. That's the first time I think we've ever done that. We usually do 2 a week, obviously. If you've been following our podcast, that's probably the schedule you've gotten used to. So just given some recent fluctuations in scheduling and travel and illnesses and so forth, really wanted to push hard this week to catch up and get back on our usual schedule of 2 a week, starting with an even numbered episode followed by an odd numbered episode. And so we will be able to do that as we head into next week, where you'll see episodes 86 and 87 come out. And so just, as I usually like to do, just plugging kind of some back episodes this week, 83 and 84, which already came out consecutively August 30th and 31st. If you go to episode 83, you can listen to my pontifications about Facebook Organic and why we've been hearing some things about that, that platform and that format, sort of ascendant compared to some of the other ones out there. So definitely check that out if you're teetering a little bit with your Facebook content game, or you haven't even started it. I would definitely encourage you to listen to episode 83. If you're heavy in Facebook and you're doing the things you're supposed to be doing, the episode may not be as value added for you. Then, of course, August 31st published episode 84, which was, again, a little bit of an open thought process about LinkedIn marketing, kind of based on a really good article I saw out on Sprout Social, where I went through a bunch of recommendations and tips that they outlined in there and kind of summarized and riffed off of that a little bit. So if you're not doing much on LinkedIn, if you're not doing anything at all on LinkedIn, you should definitely check out episode 84 and go from there with that. If you're fully engaged on LinkedIn, again, I'm not quite sure you'll get a lot out of that episode, but I will say this: the Sprout Social episode was quite engaging. I mean, it had a lot of stuff going on in there that was really informative. So definitely check that out if you get a chance. So okay. So guys, let's talk about today for episode 85. Let's talk about differentiating your company from the competition. And it sounds like a fairly simple thing, and it should be fairly simple, but I just kind of want to work through this a little bit with you and get you focused on it, kind of from the standpoint of reverse engineering your marketing messages. Okay, so when you're developing marketing angles for your company, depending on how skilled you are at that, it can be a difficult process, it can be an easy process. You may decide already at the 3-minute mark here in this episode you don't need to listen to this because you're really sharp with this and you've seen really good results with what you're doing. But what I would say is, putting the skill level aside in terms of your own inherent ability to come up with hooks and angles and campaigns and core messaging that conveys the value proposition of your business, I would say that for anybody, again, good at this or bad at this, if you start from what truly uniquely separates you from your immediate competition, I mean, you can't scour the entire globe, but you kind of know who's in your space, especially if you're like a local business or regional business. You're definitely going to know who those competitors are. Of course, as you go national, it could be a little bit harder to keep track of everybody nipping at your heels. But the point is that if you really drill down and say, I'm going to tease out no matter how granular it seems, teasing out those things that differentiate you and separate you from your competition, and then walking backwards from there into your marketing messaging and angles, and then shaping those messages and angles around those differentiators, that's really where I believe, if you think of a wheel, that's the hub that all the spokes kind of plug into. Okay? That's the nexus that all your angles and messages are going to kind of grow out of. Okay, if you think of it that way. And so, I find sometimes when I'm looking at messaging or I'm working with a company, there's a client that we're working with now that we've been working with for several months, and we developed a range of messaging with them, but only a few months in did we really tease out and nail down and solidify the actual differences. And it, that really, like, no one else that they were competing with could say. particularly when you add all those differentiators together. When you look at the 3 or 4 of them grouped together, there's absolutely no one who can say that same value proposition, taken as a whole. And very unlikely anybody can say it even one by one in this space that I'm referring to for this particular client. So that kind of triggered this thought that, hey, this would be a good podcast episode. This would be good to kind of remind you guys. Again, there's nothing, I wouldn't say there's anything here that you guys wouldn't have already realized, or you may not have already been kind of playing around with, but this is a chance to refocus yourself a little bit. If you find yourself drifting away from this kind of messaging, maybe your marketing is getting more generic. Hey, we're going to save you money. Hey, we're going to save you time. Everybody's going to say this stuff. Everybody, I don't even need to see your product or your service. Everybody's going to say they can save somebody time, they can save somebody money, they can save somebody a headache, they can save somebody, a catastrophic failure. These things sound unique, maybe, when you put your company's name in there or you put your product name in there. It's misleading. It's not really separating you from anybody. If you go around and look at their marketing and look at their messaging, more than likely you're not separating yourself from the pack by saying any of these types of things. So you've got to go down a few layers. Are you like born and raised in that hometown where your business is and all your competitors are from out of town? Is it your husband or wife, was your first client and you shot them to great success, that nobody else can say they did something like that. Do you have a certain number of years of experience that your competitors aren't even experienced in that field, for example, and you can cite the exact number of years of experience you have, and you can even display it somehow or kind of substantiate it? Is there a particular cost involved with your product that everybody else charges but you don't? And that was kind of an interesting one for this client I'm referring to, guys. Where we were learning as their marketing agency that the competition, and we're talking about a software product here, but the competition also sold a similarly priced software product, but when you bought it, you had to pay another software provider to plug in a back-end database, to create sort of a backbone infrastructure piece to the whole equation. But yet our client did not require that. Everything was native, and therefore you would save, just right off the bat, you'd save thousands of dollars by going with the company that we're working with. So that was something that, there was some awareness of that as we dialogued with them throughout the contract, but really refining that message and attaching it to other ones really came together over the last month or so. And so, so that again, that was kind of one of the inspirations for this podcast. But so that's what I'm asking you guys, is to stand back for a minute, put a blank sheet of paper in front of you or a blank whiteboard in front of you or a blank easel, and really start saying, what is it about our company? What is it about our product? What is it about our service that when I write it down on this piece of paper or this whiteboard or this easel, I will be stumped, I will be unable to name another company that can name this thing. And then let's say you come up with 3 of those. I'm not saying there's a number you need. Maybe it's 1, maybe it's 10. Let's say you come up with 3 of those things that I just described that fit that description. And you're like, okay, these 3 things, no one I'm competing with can say these things. They definitely can't say them all together, and they probably can't say them individually. Then you take number 1, go to a new sheet of paper. Okay, we're going real old school here, guys, with the paper, okay? So go to a new sheet of paper, put that differentiator on the top, and now start brainstorming your creatives and your angles and your messaging. Because there's going to be many ways that you can say it. There are going to be many ways that you can spin it. There are going to be many ways that you can weave it into social media posts, textual posts, graphics, animations, slideshows, areas on your website, your language when you're giving your elevator pitch. Okay, so let's even leave the digital world here for a second. So you're going to stare at that differentiator and you're going to think, and trust me, assuming you know your business well, you're going to start to see opportunities pop out of that differentiator. Like, oh, I could say it this way. Oh, I could say it this way, and I'd be taking sort of a dig at a competitor. You don't name that competitor, but you'd be kind of ghosting them right? By taking a little shot at them because you've got this thing and they don't, right? You'd see it like, oh, graphically, we can make a pictorial out of that differentiator. I can make an animated sequence out of that. You know what I mean? And so you literally start with each one and you start building these pieces and these messages off of it. Now, this will be dynamic. This will be something you can add to later. You're going to take some away. You're going to run some for a while, and then you're going to shelve them and replace them with new ones, and all this type of rotational, kind of action. But the point is, each one of these differentiators is going to guide you by the hand. Hopefully it's that easy for you. It's going to guide you by the hand into these different messages and angles and campaigns and promotional, approaches that you take to your business using that differentiator as the fulcrum of the messaging. Okay, so that's a really, really key element to take away from this podcast, is that process of thinking about the company, thinking about what makes it unique, truly unique. Like make an attempt to try to name another company that can do it or can say it. And if you can't put anything on that piece of paper, you got something. Okay, and then after you finish that process, we'll call it process number 1, then take each one at a time into process number 2, and then one by one, just brainstorm messages. How can we say it in text? How can we say it in pictures? How can we say it in video? And slice it up. And then this becomes this bucket of content and messaging angles that you will have this sort of spokes off the hub of the wheel. Okay? So, I'm going to leave it there, guys. I don't want to spend forever talking about this. Got to get into the holiday weekend here in the United States for Labor Day. I hope everybody's had a great summer. I mean, for us, this is kind of just here in the States. This is the unofficial end of the summer this weekend, even though fall doesn't really come till, I think it's September 22nd. But I hope everybody's been having a great summer. I hope everybody wraps up their summer in a wonderful fashion this weekend. Think about this stuff, guys. Think about ways to really, really separate your company, your business from the competition. Really kind of grow some space between you and everybody else. And then use it as a springboard to your messaging and your content and your social media posts and so on and so forth, okay? If you need help with that, if you want to engage us about that, we would love to get into a brainstorming kind of loop with you on that and see what we can do to help you create those messages and those angles and those graphics. You can find Transform on LinkedIn. You can go over to Facebook and find us there. Just type in Transform. And of course, you can go over to our website, transform.com. You can even register on there for the free consultation where we can kind of loop this kind of thing in, at least get the conversation started with you. With the podcast, would love for you guys to subscribe to it and follow us here with the podcast as well. This is one of our pillar content forums. We really like to get messaging out here to you guys through the podcast and then routed through other areas of our business. So anyway, hope everybody has had a great week. Hope everybody has a great weekend. We'll be back next week with episodes 86 and 87. But everybody here in the States, particularly for the holiday, hope you have a restful weekend, great weekend as we get ready to enter the fall season. Okay, guys, have a great night. This is Chris Anastasio signing off for the Transform Podcast, and we'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.